Ladies and gentlemen, the Medal of Honor is the highest decoration that this nation can bestow for valor. It is known as the Congressional Medal of Honor because it has been authorized by the Congress of the United States and is the only medal that is presented with the safeguards, restrictions, and qualifications that are of the highest degree. One important measure of a nation's worth is the willingness of her sons to defend her. By their actions and their exemplary bravery, the men we honor today have therefore enriched the United States. They were truly pioneers in patriotism, who blazed trails through the jungle of prevalent contemporary opinion, opinion that sometimes demeans and denigrates love of country and waxes euphoric in a fake wave of compassion for our enemies. The paths these heroes have made have been seen and will be followed by others who respect their high motivation and their great sacrifice. Because of them, our country will be stronger at a time when strength is sorely needed. The Secretary of the Navy will now read the citations.
President of the United States, in the name of the Congress, takes pride in presenting the Medal of Honor posthumously to the following Marines for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action at the cost of their lives. Lance Corporal Miguel Keith, United States Marine Corps, while serving as a machine gunner with Combined Action Platoon 132, 3rd Marine Amphibious Force on 8 May 1970 in the Republic of Vietnam. Their conspicuous gallantry, undaunted concern for their comrades, and intrepidity at the risk of their lives above and beyond the call of duty are in keeping with the highest traditions of the naval service and reflect great credit on themselves, their units, and the armed forces of the United States.
Good morning. It's another spectacular morning here in America's finest city, and I think there's no place better to be than right here at this shipyard and be able to christen this ship that's right behind us. Thank you all for being here. My name is Dennis Dubard, and I am your Master of Ceremonies for this morning's ceremony. It's great to see you here. On behalf of the over 3,100 men and women of General Dynamics NASSCO, it's my honor to represent them and to welcome you to this very special ceremony. So we might as well get started. We ask guests please rise for the presentation of colors, our national anthem, and the invocation. Parade the colors. Ladies and gentlemen, our national anthem. Retire the colors. Captain Joseph Coffey, Chaplain Corps, United States Navy, will now offer the invocation.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, you have given men and women, members of the military, veterans, and a dedicated civilian workforce the intelligence, knowledge, and experience to build great ships to be part of our service to our country. Bless those at NASCO and the Military Sealift Command who built and will operate this Expeditionary Support Base ship, the third in its class. Bless those who will command and serve on it for as long as it will be part of the fleet. May we all be inspired by the heroic sacrifice of Lance Corporal Miguel Keith, United States Marine Corps, and his courage in battle, who exemplified our core values of honor, courage, and commitment. May we always remain Semper Fidelis. We ask all this in your holy name. Amen.
Thanks, Chaplain. Please be seated. So our color guard this morning is from Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego. About a round of applause for our color guard. And our band this morning is also from Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, and they're right over there. Thank you, Marines. So before the start of this morning's ceremony, our ship sponsor and her matrons were given a bouquet of flowers from our ceremonial flower girl. And her name is Miss Kaylee Nicole Warner. Kaylee is the daughter of Matthew Warner. He's a supervisor in steel, and he's also a United States Marine Corps veteran. Kaylee, would you please stand and be recognized? And now I'd like to introduce our distinguished guests on this morning's platform. Immediately to my left is our sponsor and the mother of Miguel Keith, Mrs. Dolores Keith. Next is the president of General Dynamics NASCO, Mr. David Carver. Our principal speaker this morning is General Walter Boomer, United States Marine Corps retired. He was the 24th Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps. From the Chief of Naval Operations Staff, Vice Admiral Ricky Williamson, United States Navy. Mrs. Billiana Anderson, she's the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Ship Programs. Rear Admiral William Galinas, United States Navy Program Executive Officer, Ships. Rear Admiral Michael Wetlaufer, United States Navy, is the Commander, Military Sealift Command. And Brigadier Thomas Savage, United States Marine Corps, he's the Deputy Commanding General, 1 Marine Expeditionary Force, Camp Pendleton. Supervisor, Shipbuilding Bath, Captain Joseph Toot. The Strategic and Theater Sealift Program Manager is Captain Scott Searles. And as I've said all weekend long, the guy that's going to have absolutely the best job, he's the future master of ESB 5, Captain Brian Mershon. And in the second row are our matrons of honor, Mrs. Mary Easley, Mrs. Raquel Beck, Mrs. Terry De La Rosa, Ms. Michelle Young, and Mrs. Teresa Lewis. Again, our chaplain, Captain Joseph Copley, Chaplain Corps, United States Navy. NASCO's very own Vice President of Government Programs, Mr. Steve Eckberg. And last but certainly not least is the master and now the commander, Executive Officer of the Pre-Commissioning Detachment ESB 5, Commander Keith Nielsen. So we're also honored today to have some other distinguished visitors, and I'd like to also ask to have some members of the Keith family, especially his brothers, Lonnie, Bobby, and Jesse. Would you all please stand as well? We have the former Secretary of the Navy, the Honorable Donald Winter. And accompanying him is his wife, Linda, who's the president of the Society of Ship Sponsors. We also have Mrs. Rosalie Calhoun. She was the sponsor of the USS John C. Calhoun, and she's also the president of the Society of Ship Sponsors. From General Dynamics, the Executive Vice President of the Marine Group, Mr. Rob Smith. The immediate past president of General Dynamics NASCO and the current president of General Dynamics Electric Boat, Mr. Kevin Graney. Next to Kevin is the past president of General Dynamics NASCO and Bath Iron Works, Mr. Fred Harris. And if you notice when you walked in, we have a very large contingent of sailors and Marines over here to my right. They're all the pre-commissioning crew of the USNS Miguel Keith. Would you please stand to be recognized? Thank you. So again, thank you all for being here on this very sunny day here in Southern California, an exciting day. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. It's my honor this morning to introduce the President of General Dynamics NASCO, Mr. David Carver.
Good morning. Thank you, Dennis. Flag officers, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the entire NASCO team, it's my distinct honor to welcome each of you to the christening of the ESB 5, the Miguel Keith. I'd first like to recognize our sponsor, Dolores. Thank you for being here. And her maids of honors, Miss Mary E. Easley, Miss Terry De La Russa, Miss Michelle Young, Mrs. Raquel Keith Beck, Mrs. Teresa Lewis. We are pleased to have you with us today. And of course, I must recognize the ship's namesake, Lance Corporal Miguel Keith. Corporal Keith is here with us in spirit, and it's an honor to build this ship for him. The NASCO team is justifiably proud of every ship we build, but this one is special because of its namesake and what he represents as an American. Before I describe some of Miguel's amazing accomplishments, I would like to share with you the incredible journey of this magnificent ship. Last July, while the ship was being constructed in the graving dock, the one you all passed by on your way down to this ceremony, a catastrophic event occurred. The boundary or wall, known as a caisson that holds the water in the bay from going into the dock, failed. Within minutes, 22 million gallons of water flooded the graving dock, causing significant damage to the ship as well as the dock itself. We were fortunate not to have anyone hurt, but of course there was significant damage to the ship. The entire NASCO team came together that night without hesitation. No one questioned the tireless hours that had to be worked or the hard tasks that had to be undertaken. As one team, the men and women of NASCO quietly, methodically, and with a sense of purpose set upon a journey to recover the ship in the graving dock. Without that effort, we would not be here today. While I'm extremely proud of the entire NASCO team, I would like to recognize that this was done under the superb leadership of Mr. Kevin Graney, our past president. Thank you, Kevin. Miguel's story is remarkable because it describes an ordinary American from San Antonio, Texas, who fought to preserve the great country and all of its ideals, not just for Americans, but for also people all over the world. Miguel entered military service with the Marine Corps in January 21st, 1969, at the age of 18. Following training at Marine Corps Recruit Depot here in San Diego, he was assigned the 3rd Marine Amphibious Force Operating in Quai Na Province, Republic of Vietnam. During the early morning of 8 May 1970, Lance Corporal Keith was seriously wounded when his platoon was subject to heavy ground attack by a greatly outnumbered enemy force. Despite his painful wounds, he ran across the fire-swept terrain to check the security of vital defense positions, and then, while completely exposed to view, proceeded to deliver a hail of devastating machine gun fire against the enemy. Determined to stop 5 of the enemy approaching the command post, he then rushed forward, firing as he advanced. He succeeded in disposing of 3 of the attackers and dispersing the remaining 2. At this point, a grenade detonated near Lance Corporal Keith, knocking him to the ground, further inflicting wounds. Fighting pain and weakness from loss of blood, he again braved the concentrated hostile fire and charged an estimated 25 enemy who were massing to attack. The vigor of his assault and his well-placed fire eliminated 4 of the enemy, while the remaining fled for cover. During this valiant effort, he was mortally wounded by an enemy soldier. By his actions that day, Miguel was awarded our nation's highest honor, the Medal of Honor. Miguel's legacy will live on with this magnificent ship that you see behind me. If I had to choose one word to describe the ship, I would say adaptable. His remarkable capabilities will follow our service members and women to carry out multiple missions, including air mine countermeasures, counter-piracy operations, maritime security operations, humanitarian aid and disaster relief, special operations, and Marine Corps crisis response. The ship is designated to support MH-53 and MH-60 helicopters, MV-22 tilt-rotor aircraft, and unmanned drones. She's equipped with the flight deck, forward accommodations that could support up to 250 personnel. Like her namesake, this ship is also a force multiplier. She can respond more quickly and effectively to crisis and reduce demand on our surface combatants. These ships are capable and inherently flexible, and perhaps most importantly, in an age of constrained budgets, affordable, in every sense, a force multiplier. The men and women that built this ship are highly trained, highly skilled individuals, and our workforce is the most diverse and largest in the United States. From design, conception, to delivery, we come together each day with the common purpose to build and repair the finest ships that sail the high seas. As shipbuilders, the work we do serves a purpose greater than ourselves. We all take enormous pride in that. We have a tradition here at NASCO where we recognize a few shipbuilders who stood out during the construction of the ship, and I'm proud to continue that tradition today. Elizabeth Corkage is a senior engineer. She was one of the first engineers on scene after the failure of the caisson. She worked tireless hours analyzing ship stability along with ship and dock loading. Working with waterfront services, ship management, test and trials, she made the critical decisions early to mitigate damage and begin the recovery process. Beth, would you please stand to be recognized? Thank you very much. Tyler McLean is a shipwright. After the graving dock incident, he worked 12 hours, 7 days a week, monitoring the ship for any movement after she was securely put back in place. Tyler, would you please stand and be recognized? Thank you. Finally, I would also like to recognize the man responsible for the construction of the Miguel Keith, ship manager Kerry Golding. Day in and day out, Kerry demonstrates a commitment to excellence in shipbuilding. ESB 5 is his 8th ship as a ship manager. Kerry and his team had to deal with the challenges of the recovery from graving dock incident to a short trip up the coast to Oregon to dry dock the ship to repair damage, and finally sea trials. By working together, they never missed a milestone. Kerry, would you please stand? Congrats to you and your team. What we christen today is not just a ship, it's an embodiment of the American unity and purpose, a beacon of freedom that will carry Miguel's legacy and the legacy of America to people all over the world. On behalf of the 3,100 employees and subcontractors of General Dynamics NASCO, I'm proud to present the Miguel Keith for christening to our sponsor, Mrs. Dolores Keith. Thank you all.
Thanks, Dave. Representing the Commandant of the Marine Corps is Brigadier General Thomas Savage, United States Marine Corps. General Savage is the Deputy Commanding General, 1st Marine Expeditionary Force at Camp Pendleton. One MEF's motto is in every climb and place. Please welcome Brigadier General Thomas Savage.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really honored that I've been given the opportunity to speak to you all today. This is truly a special event. We not only are here to honor a true American hero from a past war, Miguel Keith, but also to christen a ship which exemplifies the future of the Navy and the Marine Corps. We have the opportunity to celebrate our past and our future in one fell swoop. As I said, it's a pretty special opportunity. As Marines, I can confidently say, revel in our history more than any other service. From the time we were in boot camp or officer candidate school, we study the battles fought and the heroes who won them. Those who have gone before us set an example, a high standard that we strive to live up to. We don't want to let them or the Corps down. Miguel Keith is one of those heroes. I'm not going to go into the details of his actions that day. They were just spoken about, and other people that are here can speak with more relevant experience and more eloquently than I. I will only say that his bravery was incredible. Although we try to live up to the standards set by the Marines who have gone before, in this case, it's nearly impossible. But in trying to live up to that standard, it makes us all better. His example breathes life into our values of honor, courage, and commitment. But even as we uphold the traditions of our past, we must find a way to win the battles of our future. In order to do that, the Marine Corps is currently going through a period of significant change. For the last 18 years, since 9/11, we have been focused on fighting land wars, counterinsurgency campaigns well inland. We've been accused by some of becoming a second land army. Well, if that is so, that is because that is what our country needed us to do. But while we were fighting these wars, we strayed from our roots, our natural connection with the Navy. Our identity is part of a naval force, a force that comes from the sea but can fight on the land. And even as this was happening, potential adversaries were improving their capabilities, particularly as it relates to sea control and sea denial, challenging our naval force in ways that it hasn't been challenged since the end of World War II. So, as we have done since our inception, the Marines must adapt and overcome. And we must look towards the future fight by preparing for the way we fought in the past. Moving forward, our Commandant has directed that we reestablish connections with the fleet. We will become part of a truly integrated naval force, with Marines supporting fleet operations, supporting the Navy in establishing sea control and sea denial against near-peer threats. How will the Marine Corps do this? It could mean Marines ashore operating anti-ship missiles as an extension of the fleet's magazine, augmenting sea-based fires and adding options to the geometry of attack and defense. It could mean providing additive weapons to Navy ships to defend the amphibious task force, or going ashore to rearm and refit naval assets for follow-on actions. These are among a number of ideas and concepts we are currently exploring and technologies we are beginning to invest in. But what is common in all of our thinking is that we need vessels that are flexible, adaptable, and affordable. Ships that have the ability to reconfigure based on the mission, with spots to land our aircraft, berth our Marines, and spaces to plan and command and control our operations. The Miguel Keith is one of those vessels. It will provide the naval force with additive capability, another arrow in the quiver of our fleet commanders. And at the tip of that arrow is the U.S. Marine Corps. As I understand it, the Secretary of the Navy will, in a short time, recommission this ship as a United States ship. Based on how the fleet commanders intend to use it, this makes sense. It will be a warship. Therefore, it is right and appropriate that this warship be named after a great warrior, the USS Miguel Keith. So there are a lot of speakers here, and I'm out of time, but I do not want to step off the stage without mentioning what an absolute privilege it was for me today to meet the Keith family. As was Miguel, they are truly great Americans, and I'd ask that you give them once again a hand. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. God bless America, and Semper Fidelis.
Thanks, General. Our next speaker is Rear Admiral Michael Wetlaufer. He's the commander of Military Sea Lift Command. Admiral Wetlaufer oversees the readiness and operations of the Combat Logistics Force, which operates over 110 ships daily around the globe. Please welcome Rear Admiral Wetlaufer.
Thanks very much. Good morning. Mrs. Keith, the Keith family, pleasure to meet you yesterday. I had a fantastic time with you last night at dinner. Distinguished guests, Americans, it's a great honor for me to be here to represent the men and women of the Military Sea Lift Command in welcoming our 3rd Expeditionary Sea Base, the USNS Miguel Keith, to service. It is also my honor to be here today with the Keith family members and, as General Savage said, with our Navy and Marine Corps family as we christen this ship. The USNS designation signifies that this is a support ship operated by the Military Sea Lift Command. The mission of MSC is to provide agile logistics and special mission support anywhere in the world, 24/7, 365. And Miguel Keith will soon join MSC's 125 ship fleet to support the Joint Force. As you know, our nation's naval forces, our Marine and Navy team, are critically important in building partnerships with our friends and allies, rapidly responding to crises, deterring adversaries, and sustaining our forward presence to protect our homeland. The Expeditionary Sea Base that is behind me will do all these things and much more, providing leadership with options in great power competition, with an innovative platform for the Joint Force and a unique combination of aviation support, equipment staging and repair, command and control, and most importantly, a well-trained crew. I can, and I'm sure you can, envision a future with unmanned systems from the air and the sea launching from her decks, controlled by sailors, Marines, and civil mariners as we continue to push ourselves forward in the oceans. Like her sister ships, Louis B. Puller, currently operating in the Middle East, and the Herschel Woody Williams, soon to deploy to 6th Fleet, Miguel Keith gives our nation a competitive advantage in a competitive world. I want to thank the men and the women who built this magnificent ship, to the team here at NASCO and all the engineers, the naval architects, and craftsmen who had a hand in shaping this platform. Know that today, America is made stronger by your work. The construction of this ship is a great example of what our industry and government team can accomplish. It is only through this unwavering partnership that we continue to remain the premier maritime force in the world. The christening master, Captain Brian Mershon, the chief engineer, Chris Updegrove, and the crew of Miguel Keith, with us today, proudly represent the thousands of civil mariners and staff in the Military Sea Lift Command. Mariners, civilian mariners are the heart and the soul of the merchant fleet and the maritime industry. They are also true patriots who serve on the leading edge of our defense transportation system. The MSC team will honor the legacy of Miguel Keith as we maintain and operate this great ship with the same skill, tenacity, relentless courage that he displayed as he served our country. And we are so lucky today that one of my former shipmates, ABH-1 Fulmar, who's sitting right back over there, is now a member of this crew. His father, Corporal Bobby Fulmar, fought with Miguel Keith. Please give him a hand for his father. Finally, I'd like to thank the ship's sponsor, Mrs. Keith. Today's ceremony marks the beginning of a special relationship that you and the extended Keith family will have with this ship and her crew. May God bless this ship, all those who built her, and all those who will sail in her. Thank you.
Thanks, Admiral. Our next speaker is Ms. Billiana Anderson. She's the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Ship Programs. She provides executive leadership for more than $46 billion in complex new construction programs defining the 21st century's surface combatant fleet. Ms. Billiana Anderson.
Thank you. To our sponsor, Mrs. Keith, the Keith family, admirals, generals, officers and crew of Miguel Keith, distinguished guests, and to all of you who have come to San Diego to witness the christening of this magnificent ship, good morning. It is wonderful to be here today. As we celebrate today, it is an honor for me to stand before you representing the 76th Secretary of the Navy, Richard Spencer, for the christening of this fine ship, the first naval vessel he named, the future Miguel Keith ESB 5. It is appropriate on a day like today that we remember and say thank you to the thousands of deployed sailors, Marines, soldiers, and airmen who, along with their families, are sacrificing so much to keep this great nation free. And to all those veterans in the audience today, please stand to be recognized. And thank you for your service to our nation. Shipbuilding is one of the most difficult undertakings we do as a nation. It takes perseverance, hard work, and attention to detail to meet every milestone in a vessel's construction that allows us to commemorate an event such as today's christening. Shipbuilding is a team effort. It takes a dedicated Navy and industry team to build our nation's fleet. I am reminded of a famous quote that embodies this spirit. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men to gather wood, divide the work, and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. To the men and women of General Dynamics NASCO, the Supervisor of Shipbuilding Bath, the Navy Program Office, the Military Sea Lift Command, and the Naval Sea Systems Command, it is evident that you do indeed yearn for the vast and endless sea. You have labored tirelessly with your teammates to build this extraordinarily capable ship, and I congratulate you and your teams on another job well done. And with this christening, we also celebrate the namesake of this formidable ship, Lance Corporal Miguel Keith. It is Marines of incredible character like Miguel Keith that we must measure ourselves against every day. It is certainly a tall order, but Lance Corporal Keith's courage and valor in Vietnam should inspire us, to aspire us to be worthy of the legacy he and many like him created. Our next Expeditionary Sea Base will carry his name and be a tangible reminder to every American that Marines honor their legacy, that Marines carry the warrior spirit, and that the United States Marine Corps will not back down in the face of any adversity. Our Corps advances forward with honor, with courage, and with commitment. And now a word about our sponsor. Although she has been involved since the very beginning, this christening ceremony marks the formal beginning of a lifelong relationship between the men and women who will sail the Miguel Keith and the vessel's sponsor, Lance Corporal Keith's mother, Mrs. Dolores Keith. You arrived here blessed with many wonderful children and grandchildren, but today your family grows a bit larger as the men and women of the Miguel Keith now honor your son sailing around the world, carrying on your family's legacy. On behalf of Secretary Spencer, I would like to personally thank you for your service and welcome you to the Society of Sponsors of the United States Navy. To the officers and crew of the Miguel Keith, I wish you fair winds and following seas in the days ahead. To all who are present today, we are indeed privileged to witness the christening of this exceptional ship into our Navy. May God bless her, her crew, her sponsor, her namesake, and may God bless America. Thank you.
Next is Vice Admiral Ricky Williamson. He's the CNO's Deputy for Fleet Readiness and Logistics, and he's certainly no stranger to San Diego. He commanded Naval Base San Diego just right next door. Please welcome Vice Admiral Williamson.
Dennis, thank you for that kind introduction. And good morning, everyone. What a beautiful day, as it always is here in San Diego. I'd like to begin by expressing my appreciation for our sponsor, Dolores, and all of the distinguished guests here. Welcome. This is a momentous occasion, and it is an honor to be here on behalf of Admiral Mike Gilday, our Chief of Naval Operations. It is my absolute pleasure to join you in celebrating the beginning of this capable ship, as well as honoring the man, Lance Corporal Miguel Keith, and Dolores Keith, his mother and our ship's sponsor. Today we're granted the rare opportunity to witness the moment when an intricate mass of steel and advanced technology suddenly becomes a living thing, complete with a character all its own. To the men and women of NAVSEA, NASCO, and the many organizations whose blood, sweat, and tears have gone into the design and construction of this great vessel, thank you. Every ship has a sponsor. It is said that the sponsor's spirit and presence will guide the ship throughout its service life and watch over the welfare of embarked civilian mariners, sailors, and Marines. While we know Mrs. Keith is honored by that title, being Miguel's mother is a very powerful title in its own right. Thank you, Dolores, for enduring your son's brave sacrifice to our nation these many years, and for your devotion to the men and women who will embark in the future, Miguel Keith, the U.S. Navy's 5th Expeditionary Sea Base vessel. This ship will serve in an expeditionary capacity, a testament to how Miguel and his fellow Marines served during the Vietnam War, and for which Miguel was recognized with the Congressional Medal of Honor and our nation's highest military decoration for heroism. This ship will carry Miguel's legacy across the globe. Miguel Keith will lend the strength and fortitude of the warriors of America's past to the men and women who will walk the decks of the ship. Every naval ship stands at a crossroads between the past and future, and Miguel Keith is no exception. U.S. Navy vessels contain the most modern technology, but still rest on the strong foundation of naval traditions like the keel laying, launching, mast stepping, and commissioning. This is the evolution of a naval ship, events that forever bind the builder, the sponsor, the namesake, and the crew. Today's event is one small but important marker in what will be Miguel Keith's legacy. The christening marks the transition of the ship from the new construction phase to its comprehensive test and trials phase, moving from a mere hull number to a ship with a name and spirit. But traditions alone do not give the ship her strength. The strength of the ship is not just in the temper of its steel, but more so in the temperament of its crew. We ask sailors, Marines, and civilian mariners to be courageous, fearless, bold, and relentless, and they deliver each and every day. Those same qualities define the heart and soul of this great ship. The crew will write this ship's first chapter through the highest standards of honor, courage, and commitment. These standards and your example will guide the ship and all who serve aboard her. The close bond between this ship and her crew will allow the Miguel Keith to sail to the tip of the spear, ready if called upon in harm's way. Lance Corporal Keith answered that call in his day, and his namesake will help ensure that our nation's sons and daughters, who will someday answer that call, have the ability to prevail and defend freedom. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
So we're truly honored this morning to have our principal speaker with us. That's General Walter Boomer, United States Marine Corps retired. General Boomer is an infantry officer by trade, and he commanded all the Marine forces during Desert Shield and Desert Storm. From 1992 to 1994, he served as the 24th Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to General Boomer.
Mrs. Keith, many distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, marvelous sailors and Marines. Your previous speakers have very eloquently talked about the marvelous ship that's being christened today and told you something about Lance Corporal Keith. I too wish to do both, but in a slightly different way. In 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait. President George H.W. Bush assumed a group of allies whose mission it came to liberate Kuwait. The U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines were the backbone of that liberating force. I had the privilege of leading the Marines during that campaign. Most historians agree that it was the single largest operation in the history of the Marine Corps. Well, what does that have to do with ESB 5? There were 92,000 Marines in that command. They had to be fed, sheltered, and equipped for war. Hundreds of thousands of tons of supplies. How do you think it got there? Wasn't flown in. There's not enough airlift in our inventory to even begin to do that job. It arrived in the ships of our military Sea Lift Command. Those USNS ships had been pre-positioned, loaded at Diego Garcia years before. Without those supplies, we would not have been able to liberate Kuwait. Without that logistics support, the Marine Corps is a hollow force. Who makes it a complete package? Ships like this one. And those who man these ships. You are the foundation of our expeditionary capability. You will never receive the recognition you deserve. But know in your hearts that those of us that understand war hold you in the highest of esteem. Because without you, we cannot fight and win. It's entirely fitting that ESB 5 should be named after Lance Corporal Miguel Keith. The Marine Corps fought in Vietnam for over a decade. Nearly one half a million Marines served in Vietnam. 13,000 were killed, 88,000 wounded. During that period, there were 58, yes, only 58 Medals of Honor awarded to Marines. Let the significance of that sink in for a moment. 58 of a 500,000. The The words of Miguel's citation are stark, stating the facts of his action in cold simplicity. Wounded, rushed forward, charged, fired, valiant. But why was he there? And what was it like? Lance Corporal Keith was part of a combined action platoon. You've heard that acronym this morning. This was a program created by the Marine Corps because of our belief that the war could only be won with the help and support of rural villagers who bore the brunt of the war's cruelty. Small groups of hand-picked Marines, like Miguel, were sent out into the countryside to live with and train the defense forces of the village, to bring some stability and hope to the village. These Marines were by themselves. They were not abandoned, but there were no other Marines around. It was dangerous. And every day they were at risk. And many days they fought with their Vietnamese buddies. I understand the loneliness. I was an advisor to a Vietnamese infantry battalion. There were 2 of us with 800 Vietnamese and no U.S. Marines around. Lance Corporal Keith and his fellow Marines were putting their lives at risk every moment of every day to help the Vietnamese people. The enemy sat back and watched and waited, seeking that opportunity to attack with the hope that they could drive these Marines out of the village. When they saw the opportunity, they struck. What is it like when from nowhere enemy fire surrounds you, explosions fill your ears, terror grabs at your gut? In those first seconds, some flee. Some try to become part of the earth on which they're standing. Most return fire. And some, for reasons that we can hardly comprehend, stand up and fight back with every ounce of their being, not putting aside the fear they feel, but overcoming it. They are special people, my friends. They are special people, like Lance Corporal Keith, who have something within them, something within their deepest being that most of us do not have. That is why there were only 58 of 500,000. And ESB 5 is being named for one of them. So officers and men of this ship, when times get tough, when the work seems dangerous, overwhelming, and the days long, let this be your battle cry for Miguel, for Miguel, for Miguel. Thank you.
Thank you, General. Mrs. Keith, been a real trooper these last couple of days. So I don't know if it's been said, but Mrs. Keith lives in a little small town right outside of Abilene, Texas. It's called Baird, Texas. And I had the opportunity to visit her a couple of months ago, and she's been really excited to be here and excited for this opportunity to share this experience with her family and the naming of this ship. So she would like to say a couple of words. And so, Mrs. Keith.
Good afternoon, please. I want to thank all of you for helping me here. I love all of the Marines, all of the soldiers, and I can't help it that I lost my son. But if that's one thing that the Lord wanted, I'm happy for it. He never got married. He never knew what a father was. But in heaven, he is over there. He's looking at us as a good friend. Thank you very much.
Now, ma'am, it's time to put you to work. Oh, she said okay. I think that's it. So Dave, if you would please escort our sponsor over the Striker Bar. And while they're making their way over there, let's hear from the Marine Band. Thank you. And now it's over to the christening platform. Mrs. Keith, would you please christen the ship?
I cannot see. I need somebody to read it for me.
For the United States of America, I christen thee, Miguel Keith. May God bless this ship and all who sail her.
Well, that was pretty spectacular. Thank you, Mrs. Keith. You did a great job. So again, thank you all for being here. This concludes our ceremony. On behalf of all the men and women of General Dynamics NASCO, thank you for attending. We wish all of you fair winds, following seas, and Semper Fidelis.
I did.